Did you ever have one of those days in your life that you'll never forget? Like a big day that was a life-changing moment for you? I had one of those days that was actually the best day of my life. Other than my kids being born and my wedding day, this day, the day I watched my friend and client, Susan Peters, triumphantly walk a 5K after being in a wheelchair for 12 years. So it all kind of started out with Susan back in 1993. She was hit head-on by a snowplow, which rendered a once active and vibrant woman pretty much helpless and injured and in a wheelchair and in a coma. She almost died. So Susan, before the accident, was actually this real active and vibrant person. She rode horses, she sang, she had a great job, she worked out. She was just this active person. She wasn't somebody to sit around and watch TV. But now she couldn't do anything. She was confined to a wheelchair, bedridden. She had to endure years of physical therapy and painful physical therapy. And on top of that, to just make matters even worse, she ended up having to divorce her husband at the time because they found out he was trying to steal the money that was awarded to her during the accident. So talk about a low point. Susan was at a low point. So in 2005, or I'm sorry, 2000, there we go, Susan walks into the Northwest Athletic Club. I was working at the Northwest Athletic Club and I saw Susan for the first time and she could barely talk. She was hunched over. She was mumbling. Her voice cords had been damaged from the accident. She could barely talk. Her mom did most of the talking for her. Luckily, I was the person at the desk that day because I had worked with somebody in a wheelchair before and I was willing to take on the challenge. And so training Susan was going to be both challenging and very rewarding at the same time, is what I would soon find out. So Susan and I began to train, and right away I knew something was different about Susan. She, early on in the training, she had to drive her wheelchair back and forth from her apartment, which wasn't that far away. But on her way home one day, she was driving her wheelchair, and she hit her joystick because she sneezed, and she careened off into the ditch, rolling her wheelchair. And because like I said, her vocal cords weren't strong, she ended up spending the night there. Luckily, it wasn't Minnesota winter. It was a nice time of year. But the next day, I was actually talking to her in the ambulance when she was in the ambulance getting checked out. And instead of feeling sorry for herself, Susan actually made a joke and started kind of calling it her camp out, her camping trip. And right then, I knew something was different about Susan. So we ended up going on and we ended up training more. And I knew something was different just from that moment because of her sense of humor. Susan wasn't willing to stay down too long. And her initial goal was to walk again. And we started to walk. First it was from our trainer desk to the first aerobic studio, which was 10 yards. Then to the second aerobic studio, which was 50 yards. And then pretty soon it was around the whole track, which is about 200 yards. So she was making real progress. And then 2004, Susan told me something really big. She said to me, I want to walk a 5K. And I looked at her and I knew just because of the person that she was and from working with her that if anyone could do it, she could. But of course, when she told all the other people in the club, Susan Peters, they're like, okay, Susan, that's great. Minnesota nice, they actually said, a patronizing smile, like, oh, that's nice, like, trying to be nice, but really kind of fakey. Even though they knew she couldn't do it, I knew she could. Despite what the doctor said and all the other people, I knew if anyone could do it, Susan could. So we began to change up the regimen. The regimen was, began to move from in the gym to outside because she was going to have to walk this 5K outside in uneven pavement and the elements. Sidewalks aren't nice and flat like a track. So we ended up walking outside and walking down a place called Early Lake, which was really close to the club. And we'd walk about half mile to 3/4 mile typically. But then one day we decided to do something bigger and better. So I remember back that day in Early Lake, I made her go around the whole lake. Now, if you know Susan, she doesn't like heat. It was a hot summer day, humid, and she agreed to go around the lake, but almost about maybe half to 3/4 of the way around, she got hot, she got tired, I was kind of dragging her along. And when she gets tired and she gets mad, that potty mouth comes out. So she called me every name in the book, but being her coach and her trainer, I made her go around that lake. And we finally got to the end, I put her in the car and she collapses in the car and she looked at me with this grin. that she always had. And she said, she goes, that was awesome. You know, basically she knew that I had pushed her to a new level, and we had gone around that lake, which is about almost half a 5K, and we had made a turning point. So then after that, we did something really big and audacious. We decided to sign up for the Monster Dash 5K down Lake Harriet in Minneapolis, which is about, around Lake Harriet's about a 5K. So we pushed up to the race, and we started to up the training. We had the true nutrition was really dialed in. We had to fuel her like an athlete, because what she was doing was demanding on her body. And so we got a week before the race, and we went out to walk, actually, Lake Harriet. My plan was to have her walk the course the week before so she'd be familiar. Well, it was windy, it was cold, Susan was off kilter, things just weren't going well. So I made a judgment call as her guide to say, you know what, we're gonna take this week and we're gonna rest. That's what a lot of athletes do the week before an event. So we're gonna do chiropractic massage. We are gonna let your body completely recharge. And so that's what we did. So then the day of the race came. We got to the day of the race, and I called Channel 11, a local news station, and they agreed to come down and cover it. They're like, from wheelchair to 5K, wow, we're gonna come cover that. We get down there, it's chaotic. I don't want Susan to be, you know, wasting time walking around, so I try to get her in there and make her use as little energy as possible, because I knew she was gonna need everything she could for the race. And I remember my wife asking me, you know, the night before too, my wife being an occupational therapist, like, you really think she can do it? I said, I don't know if she can do it, but all I know is I know she's gonna give 100% tomorrow. But in the back of my mind, I was a little nervous. You know, I wanted to see her succeed. So here we were the day of the race. We start walking around, the gun goes off, and we're walking. Channel 11's following us around, and Susan being Susan's mugging for the reporters and talking a little good-natured smack as she's going around the lake. She's got this grin. But then we rounded the corner, the final lap, and that's when it got tough. So then we're coming down. I just remember going down that last leg. But the cool thing was, during that whole time, all these people in the park kind of around the lake had heard what Susan was doing, and she had developed a fan club. So they had gathered around down at the finish line, and Susan was walking around the lake. She was getting tired. Her body starting to give out. The pain was starting to set in, was getting unbearable. The good old F-bombs were coming out again. And she was kind of at that breaking point, but then all of a sudden, as we rounded this corner, we could see the finish line. The Minneapolis police had set up a special finish line for her using their police tape. And this crowd of people, this wave of noise came from down at the end of the lake. And all of a sudden it was like, you know, when you get your second wind, all of a sudden there's like new energy in her. And I remember her picking up the pace, closer and closer. Crowd of noise got louder and louder, closer and closer. Crowd noise got louder and louder. And I still remember this day, and it still kind of chokes me up thinking about it. Walking across that finish line and raising her arm up in victory, you know, watching her go through that whole thing of, you know, falling down, you know, falling out of her wheelchair, everybody saying she couldn't do it, all the painful surgery she had, and watching her triumph that day had taught me three things. Number one is how important it is to have a guide and a coach. I'm never going to give myself all the credit, but Susan and I were a great team, and having a good guide and a coach is really about teamwork. And when she didn't feel like doing anything, even though I know she could, I was able to push her above and beyond what she thought she was capable of. And I was able to put a plan together that we were able to follow so that she could be successful. And also she, you know, number two I think is really important is Susan, even though her body was broken, her mind was intact. She had a vision of, I'm still that vibrant workout person, even though my body's not doing what I want it to do right now. So she actually had that vision of walking that 5K. She got that vision and she stuck with it, no matter when she fell or we had a setback. Number three is the only person that you have to blame for not achieving something is yourself. Because one thing I learned is, like, if Susan Peters can go from being in a wheelchair, being totally and completely disabled with no hope of anything, to walking a 5K, you can do anything. You can get in shape. So I want to close with this right here. No matter how tough you think getting in shape is, no matter how hard you think or busy your life is, if Susan Peters can walk in a 5K after being where she was at, you can do a few more push-ups. You can be a little more disciplined on your nutrition. You can get your butt out of bed to go to the gym. All of us can do that. And whenever I start to feel my pity party coming on, I cancel the pity party and I remember the Susan Peters stories, because it has really shaped me for the rest of my life, because I was her coach and guide, but really I was the one that got inspired by working with someone like that.